Hello, AP World History students. Mr. Lassiter here, and in this video, we're going to be thinking about an aspect that you had a great deal of questions about last week, and that is silver. This map is from the College Board's AP World History exam in 2006. We are thinking about this global flow of silver primarily from the Americas into Europe and Asia. And so if you look at this map, we're going to come back to it several times today. It shows you major silver mines. I'll talk about Potosi, central Mexico, Zacatecas is one of the places where we see some major silver mining. And that silver certainly flows out of the Americas and becomes a global currency. We'll talk a little bit more about that, flowing to Europe and then from Europe to Asia, and in some cases directly to Asia across the Pacific. This map was intended in 2006 to give you a little bit of context for the question, a little bit of historical background. It was not a document or source that went with the essay specifically. You might see maps like this in multiple choice questions, so I think it's worth just taking a look at. And it provides a lot of historical context here. So I want to just draw attention to a couple of things. Number one, thinking about the mining of silver in the Americas. It shows you where Spanish America was, and it shows where it flows to. So it tells you kind of the idea of some of these countries that are powerful that you might see mentioned in your documents: the Netherlands, Great Britain, Spain, Portugal. It also gives you a hint that the Ottoman Empire is here. For the modern SAQ, or the modern DBQ, excuse me, that might be valuable information for providing some context to the beginning of this global trade. It tells you that the Mughal Empire is in charge in India, that it's the Ming Dynasty in China, which will come up a lot in our sources. And then it even gives you some information about, Tokugawa Japan is there. So some really good background information we can glean just from this map and try to situate, at least in terms of where we are in history. When I teach the global flow of silver in my classes, I think I talk a lot about specifically the Spanish Peso de Ocho. Now, this coin, which you see pictured here, will eventually be minted and used so widely that it really does become the first kind of global currency. Silver is that. The Peso de Ocho was pretty much the most common of these silver coins. And you can see in this image that this silver Spanish coin was actually used in China as well. The Chinese would put kind of these slash marks in it, put characters into the coins to show, especially if they were the marks of like a well-known merchant, to show that they were real silver. They weren't counterfeit or anything along those lines, but they were used as currency in China. Silver itself was so desirable in Asia that when the Europeans got their hands on a great deal of silver in the Americas and the Spanish Peso de Ocho began to be minted, it was quite widely accepted. As you saw on that map, it was accepted in Europe as well as in India and China and the Philippines and Japan. So it made it an important medium for exchange. Now, as far as the advantages of this, just imagine kind of a barter economy. You're in a place that has no specific currency and you want a bolt of silk, right? And in exchange, you would offer something that you produce, perhaps. Maybe you offer some chickens, something along those lines. Well, that works perfectly fine if the other person wants or needs some chickens, and you would get what you wanted in return, right? You would get this bolt of silk. But if the other person on the other end of that transaction does not want any chickens and you have little to nothing else to offer them, then that transaction just does not get done unless you then find another person who wants some chickens, and then they have something that the person with the bolt of silk wants. And well, you can see how complicated that might get. When you introduce currency into an economy, it makes trade much easier. Now, imagine that people in Europe and people in India and people in China and people in the Americas and people in West Africa, imagine if they all use different currencies. Well, if one country values silver as a currency and one uses brass bracelets as a currency, you're going to run into the same problems you would in a barter economy. So the idea that this silver became so widely accepted really was important for the emergence of a global economy. Europeans felt perfectly comfortable using this precious metal to trade between themselves in the Americas. And in Asia, it was very widely accepted by the Mughals in India and in China. And so when you have kind of all parts of the world agreeing that this currency is acceptable, well, you're going to have very few barriers to trade. And that makes it particularly important, and why the Spanish peso de ocho stands out. It was even legal currency in the United States until the 1800s, before an act of Congress eventually said, no, we actually have to use US money. Just because this is silver, we need to remint it. So that plays a huge role here. Now, where did a lot of this silver come from? Well, the global flow of silver really takes off with Spanish mining operations in the Americas. And this is especially seen in South America at a place called Potosi. The Mita system in South America, used primarily to mine silver in places like Potosi or agriculture, of course, had massive effects on the indigenous population in the Americas, not only resulting in the deaths of many people in the Americas through horrible conditions, but just a kind of generational enslavement of those peoples, and also removal of a great deal of wealth from the Americas for Spanish use. But as we saw in the map that you had at the beginning, Potosi is not the only center of mining in the Americas. There certainly was mining operations in Mexico, and that was around the area of Zacatecas, which is still a city there in Mexico today. But Potosi is particularly noteworthy because it had such pure silver. And so it was very easy to mine that out. It was something like I'm going to forget the number, like 400 tons of silver were mined, or something along those lines. I'll have to pick that out. But it was the equivalent of 2.5 million coins per year being mined out of Potosi and being sent around the world. That's a lot of coins. You may not have a reference for it, but a Spanish piece of 8 is around $80 in value today. The effects of this global currency, of course, is a lot of what this video is about. But we also see, we can kind of just quickly take a glance ahead and think about the effects of this in places like India. The global flow of silver is going to allow India to trade even more so with the Americas, and it's going to give them this currency that Europeans have in ready supply in return, as people in India, including the Mughals, are trading in spices and providing cotton for Europeans. They now have an influx of money, and they're going to see a great deal of wealth. You're going to see in the Mughal Empire kind of an artistic renaissance, so to speak. The Mughals certainly known for their artwork and architecture. One of the great examples of that you see here is the Taj Mahal, which was basically paid for by the influx of silver coming in through trade. In China, we certainly see effects in the Ming Dynasty as they begin once again trading with the rest of the world. They had kind of drawn back from trade, isolated themselves, but as we'll see in the documents today, trade provided a great deal of silver in China, and the Chinese themselves preferred silver over all other currencies. It's going to create a lot of wealth for merchants, and then some policies in China requiring silver or taxes to be paid in silver will cause some social unrest as well. But China is going to basically kind of be like a vacuum cleaner for silver as they trade porcelain and silk and tea in exchange for this currency. So when we think about the effects of a global currency, it is far-reaching. Now, what are the effects for Europe? Well, Europe has a currency that they can spend to get all of those luxury goods that they want from Asia, and that is certainly going to be the biggest effect we see there. Europe really entering this global trade and really creating this system of globalization.